Okay. Good. All right, good evening. It's 5:30 p.m. on Tuesday, April 20th, 2021, and this is the regular meeting of the Sandpoint Planning and Zoning Commission, and it is now called to order. For the record, I am Chairman Jason Welker, presiding at Sandpoint Community Hall, 204 South First Avenue in Sandpoint, Idaho. Also present in the hall with us tonight are Commissioners Tom Briggs, Slade Camp, Horace Shuck, and Mo Stunkel. Commissioners John Hastings and Kate Policeman are absent this evening. We'll start with announcements and general public comments. Are there any general announcements or reports from the commissioners? I would actually like to ask Amanda a question.
Sure.
I'm wondering if we can expect an update on the multimodal plan anytime soon.
Absolutely. We have been launching the multimodal plan in phases. The first phase was presented to City Council at their last meeting. That presentation is available on our website. You can download sections 1 through 4, the first half of it. And then tomorrow evening, we're going to version of the plan and bringing it on May 5th for consideration of a decision. So all of the information is certainly available at those locations, and I would be happy to meet with any of you to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay.
But it's not too far off of our prior conversations. We did incorporate some of the feedback we received related to the goals and objectives. And then as many of you I know I've ran into downstairs in our main lobby, we do have the boards of the concepts placed in City Hall for viewing, and they're also on our website. So.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from commissioners?
No.
Are there any members of the public on Zoom who would like to make a comment related to something that's not on our agenda tonight?
Mr. Chairman, there are no members of the public participating this evening in the room or on Zoom.
Great. The next item on our agenda is the meeting minutes approval from the commission's last meeting. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the March 2nd, 2021 regular meeting.
I'll so move. Move approval.
Okay. Motion from Tom. Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion passes and the minutes are approved. All right, there's no old business on the agenda this evening, so we'll move on to new business. And that's the only other item tonight is a public hearing and a subsequent decision on city application PCU P21-0001, which is a request for a conditional use permit for a non-ancillary outdoor sales, specifically the allowance for one food and beverage truck at 120 Cedar Street. A notice advertising a public hearing on this matter for April 6th, 2021 was published in the Bonner County Daily Bee, the city's newspaper of record, on March 16th, 2021. Because the April 6th meeting had to be canceled, this public hearing was rescheduled for this evening. The order and procedure for the public hearing will be as follows. First, there will be an explanation of the subject of the public hearing by city staff. 2, a presentation by the applicant. Please note the commissioners should address their questions to the applicant at this time. 3, the opening of the public hearing, at which time the public may provide testimony. Questions should be asked of those testifying at that time. The order for those providing testimony will be as follows: A, in favor; B, neutral; and C, opposed. 4th will be the applicant's rebuttal testimony, at which time final questions may be asked of the applicant. Please note that if new facts are elicited during rebuttal, the public will be given an opportunity to comment on any new facts. 5, will close the public hearing. 6, commissioners will deliberate. No new information may be provided after the hearing has been closed, with questions directed only to city staff during deliberation. Before I proceed any further, I would like to ask for confirmation from each commissioner that you have had no ex parte contact or conflict of interest as pertains to this request. Can we go around?
I have
No.
none. None. None.
And none for myself. So we will now hear from city staff, who will provide an explanation regarding this application.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. Darren Fluke, the interim planning director. Nice to see you all in person for a change by Zoom. We're here tonight to hear a conditional use permit request for a single food truck, farmhouse kitchen barbecue. And as you can see on the image on your screen, located at the northeast corner of Cedar and Second Avenue, right in the downtown core. This image is a shot of their site plan. And what you see here is the food truck situated on the right or east side of the lot, indicated in blue. They're also showing some outdoor seating indicated in green, just south of the truck. The coffee stand that you see in the southwest corner of the site has been removed, and so that's no longer there. They're proposing to replace that with additional parking. This, as I stated, is a conditional use permit, which is provided for by the Sandpoint City Code. And the parcel on which it's requested is 0.44 acres in size, or just under a half an acre. Just a closer look at the site plan. If there were questions, we could take those now. This is actually a nice site for this type of land use. The parcel has ample parking. It's got good access to the public right of way. That specifically, you see those three approaches, one to Cedar and two to Second Avenue. This does, as far as the zoning analysis goes, there was a much deeper dive in your staff report on this, which I'm sure you've all seen. Just for the record, we are dealing with context area 5 in the downtown core in the comprehensive plan, and there's quite a lot of policies that do apply, and those are detailed again in your staff report. Zoning is the commercial A zone, CA, also allows for this type of use, and so no issues there for the commission to be aware of. Just so you know, and again, this is in your staff report, but food trucks are categorized as a non-ancillary booth, stall, or cart. And that just means they're not accessory to any use that's on the property already. And so they're treated sort of as their own use. We go through the conditional use process simply to make sure that this land use doesn't have an adverse impact on surrounding land uses. And if there are things that we think might be an adverse impact, then it would be appropriate to place conditions of approval on the operation of this use so that they don't, to sort of further mitigate whatever those adverse impacts might be. I know this is an ugly, busy slide, so I'm not going to read it, but I just wanted it here for reference. Again, detailed in your staff report, but I believe there are 9 separate findings that the commission should make in approving or conversely denying the application. Staff did not find any red flags as we looked at these, but certainly if the commission had questions regarding any of them, we can come back to these and go through them in some additional detail. As far as conditions of approval go, the code does lay out 7 sort of broad parameters or areas that you should be concerned about when you're looking at conditional uses. As I just stated, minimizing adverse impacts on surrounding properties or developments is number 1. And that really is the whole purpose of a conditional use permit. It's a land use that probably fits in the zone, but it might have aspects of it that are adverse to surrounding land uses or properties, and therefore we put conditions on the operation of that use, hence the name conditional use permit. And I'm sure you've looked at the conditions of approval, and essentially our proposed conditions do sort of touch on each one of these 7 areas that the code specifies are appropriate to look at. So at this point, I would just simply ask if you had questions for me. We'd be happy to take those now best that we can. And as the chairman stated in some detail, the next steps in tonight's hearing there are listed in those bullet points. And then finally, just one last slide for you, which is just something you already know, which tonight you'll make a decision one way or another. You'll either approve this application with conditions. Those conditions are proposed in the staff report, and you're certainly welcome to add those if you have other concerns or considerations. You could deny the application if it doesn't meet all of those 9 findings, or in the unlikely event that you need additional information or time to think about this, you could table the application to a date certain, not more than 40 days out after tonight's hearing, and pick the application back up at that time. And I'll just remind you that finding either for approval or denial needs to be supported by evidence and testimony on the record. And we'll have some of that tonight from the applicant and potentially members of the public. In addition to what you've seen in the packet, the staff report, the zoning ordinance citations, the comp plan citations, and any agency or public comment that we've received. So with that, I would take any questions that you have. If you don't have questions, then I think it'd be appropriate for you to open the hearing up to the public.
I have a question. Who's losing parking spaces here? Aren't those private reserved spaces for, I don't remember who they're for, but the spaces that the food truck will occupy?
Mr. Chairman, fair question. I think we should ask that of the applicant. That was not a part of the submittal. The property is situated within the parking exempt zone. And so we wouldn't require any parking either of the brick and mortar facility that's on the site or this land use. And I don't have any additional information if people have reserved spots.
It's not a question.
Sure.
Darren, I wonder if you could comment on potential conditions M, N, and O. The staff report says that these are potential conditions as determined by P and Z. Is staff recommending those, or could you just comment on them?
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, fair question. And essentially everything above that, the potential conditions are things that we believe are non-negotiable, things that are required by the ordinance, and those are in there, and we wouldn't expect that the commission would have issues with those either for or against. The other conditions that we, I think it's fair to say we recommended were to head off, anticipated adverse impacts. And so those are fairly consistent with what the applicant proposed in their narrative. And I don't think there's anything too onerous in there, but I'm sure that the applicant will be happy to speak a little more to those conditions if they feel they're unfair or out of line.
Thanks.
Any other questions for Darren? No. Okay. Next will be the applicant's presentation. As a reminder, commissioners should address their questions to the applicant at this time.
My name is Jerry Dicker. I represent GD Commercial Properties, which we own the land on which the food truck is going to be located. So this is an interim use. At some point, we will hopefully be able to redevelop that property into a higher and better use that integrates with the goals of the city. We have two projects in the city of Sandpoint now. We recently finished the Realm building, and I think we did a good job on the Realm building. We're very community minded. We try and make sure that what we do benefits the community and that we earn a good reputation for doing good projects that are helpful to everyone. We cooperate with the community and with the staff. We bought this property ultimately for redevelopment, and we also bought another property at the same time, the old Arlo building. We're in the process of trying to get demolition permits for that building, and we will then redevelop that building subject to working with the city and possibly the Army Corps of Engineers. We've been in business for over 40 years, and we love Sandpoint, and we want to make sure we do a good job for you. So the food truck has two advantages to us. It gives us some time to understand how the Sandpoint downtown works, and to also experiment with a food entity, because the chances are pretty good that we will be the food restaurant in the Arlos when we build it, which will be our first building project from scratch downtown. We've read the conditions, and the conditions of the staff seem fine with us. We think we can meet all of those conditions. The people parking on our lot are parking there only on a month-to-month basis, subject to our working with the city and the property to see how we can, provide better uses for the property. So basically, we're here to cooperate in every way possible. Allowing us to put the food truck there would be, I think, a benefit to us and also helpful to the city long-term. And while we plan the development of that property, which I would hope would occur in 5 years or less. So basically, I can answer any questions that you have to the best of my ability. So that's all I have to say right now.
Are there any questions for the applicant?
No.
No. Okay. All right, we will now proceed with the public hearing. As a reminder, if commissioners have questions for the person testifying, they should ask those questions at the time of that testimony. Public hearing is now open. For those participating on Zoom, please note that you will need a working microphone on your phone or computer to speak. When your name is called, you will see a prompt on your screen asking whether you would like to unmute. Then you'll need to unmute yourself in order to be heard. Each speaker will be allowed 3 minutes. Madam Clerk, is there anyone who would like to testify in favor of the application?
Mr. Chairman, there are still no members of the public participating this evening.
In that case, there's no one who would like to testify neutral or opposed. So is there anybody else who would like to speak? We have a couple other participants in our meeting here. Would either of you like to speak? No? Okay. All right. Are there any other questions from commissioners? All right. The applicant has another chance to speak. If there's anything you'd like to say, otherwise we'll wrap up the public hearing.
No, we'll be good citizens and I think will be a further benefit to the community.
Okay, great. Public hearing is now closed. At this time, the commission will deliberate. No new information may be provided and questions may be directed only to city staff during deliberation. And just a reminder, the staff report includes suggested motions along with language regarding conditions that can be attached. So let's start the deliberation here. Anybody like to get us started?
I have a question for staff. Can you just please confirm that they've approved the term for the CPU? I think it's 5 years.
That's correct.
Are there any seasonal conditions attached to it, or is it year round?
We, the applicant noted in their narrative that they intended to operate seasonally. I'm now blanking on the months, but whatever your season is for. Essentially now through September, October. Right. Should we take that condition out?
Has the city ever taken a position to shorten or lengthen the term of a CPU? Or CUP?
Mr. Chairman, that's a fair question. I'll defer to Amanda on that. I mean, I think that's entirely within your purview. The thinking on putting a term on it is just to check back in and make sure things are operating, copacetically with other things that are happening downtown.
Great question. We have had conditions in the past to review a conditional use permit that was issued after, say, a year. But historically, we have not put limits on conditional use permits, and we're finding the need to do so. In this particular situation, I think that in conversations with the applicant, the 5-year term seemed to be reasonable on their end in anticipation of when they would complete any further permanent solution.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Would anybody like to make a motion?
Sure.
Go for it, Tom.
I move the Sandpoint Planning Commission, after consideration of the criteria and relevant standards of the Idaho Code and the Sandpoint City Code, approve the request by Prospectors Hideaway Inc., DBA Farmhouse Barbecue, for a conditional use permit to allow for outdoor sales at the northern portion of parcel as noted in the staff report at 502 Cedar Street, including up to one food truck and accessory storage and outdoor seating in the commercial A zone, subject to the presented requirements A through L, and additionally, conditions M through O as set forth in the staff report. Based on evidence, records, and testimony, the reasons for approving this request are: staff has followed the notice procedures applicable to CUPs contained in Idaho Code and Sandpoint City Code. And based upon the information presented at the hearing and the placement of limitations to conditions, the application is in compliance with the 9 criteria for CUPs as outlined in Sandpoint City Code. The requested CUP is not inconsistent with the overall planning goals and objectives outlined in the comprehensive plan.
A question for staff really quick. Is that address correct?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was going to correct the record on that. It should be 120 Cedar Street rather than 502.
Did I read it wrong?
No, you read it correct.
Oh. Okay.
Okay.
Well, as the motion maker, I'll accept that correction.
Great. Do I hear a second?
Second the motion.
Okay. So we do a roll call.
Commissioner Riggs,
Aye.
Commissioner Shuck,
Aye.
Commissioner Camp,
Aye.
Commissioner Welker,
Aye.
Commissioner Dunkel.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes. And I believe that there's nothing else on the agenda tonight, so we will adjourn at 5:52 PM.